1968 saw the release of highly regarded Seiko diver watch reference 6159. The watch appealed the collectors and became an instant classic due to the upgrades it offered in the form of monoblock case to deliver a 300-meter water resistance using the screw-down crown, chunkier case with angular lugs, and above all, the high beat movement beating at 10 vibrations in a second. That appeared to be one of its kind in the market back in the time. 50 years later, Seiko announced Marine Master SLA-021 to commemorate the same 6159. While the watch retains the chunkier looks, bold profile with angular looks, water resistance rating and the same substantial case of 44mm, the looks and feel are the same. But what is it that has changed? My first impression when I received the watch was how small it looks. And this is purely based on my number of years of wearing Rolex Submariner, which is of course only 40mm. We look at paper specification and follow the general tendency of considering a watch case size 44mm as too big, especially when it is also 15.4mm thick, which mostly always is the case as well, but not with Seiko Marine Master. I have to tell you that this watch actually looks much smaller than the case size would suggest. I was so surprised with how smaller it looked from what I was expecting that I had to go back to Seiko website to double check the dimension before I finally believed that yes, it was actually 44mm case size. And then I spent some time in last 1 month with the watch to understand what is it that makes it not only very smaller looking than its actual size would suggest, but also very special. And I think I have found out some very vital reasons that make it very unique and exclusive offering by Seiko. There are essentially 3 reasons why it wears smaller, with the first one being the dial size. While the case of Marine Master is 44mm, the dial size is comparatively smaller and is only 28mm. There's further detail to it, where you can see that the hour markers are actually separated from the casing rehaut by minute tracker rim. So inside the minute tracker rim, the dial size actually comes down to further smaller size of only 25mm. The dial size is actually smaller than Rolex Submariner dial by 1mm. Or let's say for that matter that even though the case is 4mm larger than Sub, the dial size is the same, hence the smaller look. The second element to complement smaller dial size is the casing lug-to-lug height, which is only 50mm. This is again only 1mm taller than Rolex Submariner, which has casing lug-to-lug height of 49mm. So on paper, you'd think that this watch is 4mm larger than the Sub, but on the wrist it actually feels about the same. The third element to help further minimize the substance of the watch on the wrist is the angular lugs, that although retain the size of the watch case, but the tapered profile almost gets camouflaged within the wrist due to its angle. This is actually an interesting design where the sides of the case show the reflections of your own wrist, and many times you won't even realize that what you're looking at is the watch case and not really your actual wrist, thanks to Zaratsu polishing. Talking of Zaratsu polishing, the watch case comes with the best-in-class polishing that Seiko has to offer. There are very limited Seiko watches that come with Zaratsu polish, as this premium quality polishing mostly only comes in the higher end pieces and that are also only from Grand Seiko. The Zaratsu polish offers the case a mirror-like polish which virtually has no distortions in the reflections, meaning that what you see in the reflected image looks as actual and true to its shape that you feel you are looking at the actual object and not really its reflection. The watch comes in matte dial, which is black in color, and as much as it maintains the modern looks, the matte and subtle dial helps making the watch wear more versatile and understated. The circular hour markers is another design character that I personally find as the best selection in the diver watches range. The size of hour markers is actually very balanced, and the watch on one hand looks very timeless and modern, and on the other maintains its linkage with the classic looks of 6159. And then there is lume, which is truly jaw-dropping. The watch adopts Seiko latest LumiBrite lume, which offers 1.6 times stronger lume than previous generations. And while I have not experienced previous generations, I can tell you that the lume on Marine Master is the strongest I have ever seen in my watch collection or have shown on my channel to date. It is truly beautiful, dramatic and glamorous, and with that green color in the lume, it is actually also very fascinating. The watch comes with lume in hour indices and hands, including the seconds hand, which is what I personally love about this watch. The hands come with decent amount of polishing, and I really like the brush lines that you can see on hour and minute hand. And these lines are easily noticeable with naked eye too. I also think that the selection of golden color for the seconds hand works really well. Needless to mention, it also links Marine Master all the way back to original 6159 from 1968. The machining of seconds hand is however not very fine, and I can see some imperfections or roughness in its sides even with naked eye. Even if you look at the joint for seconds hand, it is actually a very inferior job. I wouldn't say that it is expected in the watch worth above 5,000 Aussie dollars, but I can try to ignore it given that the watch has so much else to offer. Seiko took out the model name of Marine Master from this watch, which is a controversial move. Personally, I can't understand why Seiko would do it and strip their watch of the name that was starting to make its own identity in the world full of submariners, sea masters and submersibles. When Seiko was finally about to make their own identity with compelling contender, they just took off the name Marine Master, which in itself was unique, distinctive and was starting to become an icon. The name is not only removed from the dial but also on Seiko's website, as they don't specify this watch as Marine Master anymore. I'm personally disappointed with Seiko's move to market it as standard Prospex range, and I think they have not only stripped the watch of its identity but also stepped backwards by naming it as a model that you can actually buy for 1/10 of the price that Marine Master carries. But the good news is, in the collector's world, we all know that this is Marine Master and the same watch as 6159. And then regardless of what manufacturer calls it, in collector's world, it will not lose the identity regardless. One fine example is, many of you won't even know what Rolex 116610 LV is, but you would all certainly know what Rolex Hulk is. The watch comes equipped with caliber 8L35, which beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour. Seiko are very conservative with their specifications claim. The watch as per the specs will run between -10 seconds to up to +15 seconds a day. This is actually the largest tolerance range I have heard in the watches I have ever reviewed. And it's a shame that even at this price point, the accuracy of the watch on manufacturer's website is less than impressive. Now, I use the terms accuracy on the website purposely. This particular piece in the video is not even losing a single second in a day, and it's actually losing 1 second in 2 days, which also far exceeds COSC certifications too. So I don't understand, when Seiko can actually make a watch that is this accurate, why are they reluctant in claiming it? And what's the reason they can't just make all the watches this accurate, or at least something between ±2 to 3 seconds? When you put the watch on the wrist, you truly realize that the paper dimensions of 44mm are deceiving. The watch actually wears very comfortably, and even though the wrist in the view is only 6.5 inches, which is on the smaller side for this watch, you can easily see that the watch wears really well. The case profile of 50mm easily sits in the center of the wrist, and bracelet tapers straight down towards the clasp, allowing the watch to contour to the wrist like a much smaller watch. The bracelet also sits very low and close to the wrist, and overall, watch hugs the wrist just beautifully. The watch also comes with quick extension system, but as much of a convenience it is, this is where my biggest gripe comes from in terms of how Seiko have executed it. Upon wearing this watch, there wasn't almost a single instance when I was opening the clasp and the watch bracelet wasn't lengthening inadvertently. What happens with this Seiko design is that when you open the locking lid to open the clasp, you have a natural tendency to push the lid back to clear it from hitting the clasp while opening. And as you push the lid back, it activates the mechanism to lengthen the bracelet without you knowing, needing, or wanting to do so. And then each time you secure the clasp, you pretty much have to adjust the length almost every time. And this would happen many times before you would even open the clasp. Because to open the lid, you have to push it back. And you won't know how far to move it back before the bracelet extension mechanism will activate. I personally consider this as an engineering design flaw, and it is actually very inconvenient too. The watch luckily comes with the rubber strap in the box too. So if it becomes a concern, you can always replace the bracelet with the rubber strap too, which also does offer an interesting and more rugged look. Marine Master is a very compelling offering by Seiko, with its strengths still easily outweighing its weaknesses. The iconic design with the circular hour markers with brightest lume you can get in the watch case that, despite being 44mm, does actually wear more like 41 or 42mm size. And then the case that offers the stunning Zaratsu polishing. The watch does offer the looks and experience that otherwise you would have to spend much more to get. But with all the strengths, with Seiko Marine Master, you do get a watch that isn't the most accurate in mechanical watches, at least as per the paper specs. And then the bracelet extension system is also not one of the best in the modern watch range. But then again, bringing back into the consideration its price and comparing it with other contenders that offer better accuracy or extension system, Marine Master does appear to be a bargain for the experience and feel it offers. Yes, with Marine Master, you most likely will still not need a second diver's watch, regardless of what brand or price is in the question.